Welcome aboard. This is the Admiral's Almanac, your leadership life connection, bringing leaders from all walks of life into yours so you can take charge, improve your leadership, and improve your life. With the wit and wisdom of your host, Rear Admiral Gary Hall.
And thank you for that kind introduction, Dan. I didn't realize you had such a great radio voice. To summarize, I'm Rear Admiral Gary Hall, world-famous helicopter pilot, adventurer, sportsman, and world traveler. I am perhaps the finest helicopter pilot I know, call sign Viper, and I'll be your commanding officer during your tour here at Top Gun. What? This isn't the Top Gun group? Well, I was told these are the top guns of the insurance and brokerage industry. I'm so happy to be here with you in 2021. Can you believe it? 2020 has turned 21 and now it can drink. I wonder what we're in for in this new year. Hopefully it's much better things as we get the pandemic under control, get a vaccine to everyone, and resolve this situation and get everyone back to work. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. I'm pleased to talk to you a little bit about leadership, a little bit about my service to our nation. Now, you may know that I served at the White House for 2 years on the National Security Council. In that role, I had humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, immigration, migration, refugees, atrocity prevention, democracy and governance, fragile states stabilization, UN peacekeeping operations, and religious freedom, women and children's issues, and recycling. I didn't have recycling. But I spent 2 years there at the White House. I sure learned a lot about politics that I will use again in the future. Never, I'll tell you, being in the military, you can trust those that you're working with. In politics, a little bit more challenging when it comes to trust. Anyway, one thing I did learn was how fantastic the men and women are that are on the National Security Council. The National Security Council is made up of about 320 individuals. Only about 12% are political appointees. The rest are career employees from all areas of government, from FBI, CIA to Department of State, Homeland Security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're all experts in their field. So all those portfolios I mentioned, I was assisted by pros that have had maybe 10, 15 years experience in those areas. But one thing I learned is that the leadership I learned at sea, in the air, and on shore, those traits I learned applied directly to my leadership at the National Security Council as a special assistant to the president and senior director for international organizations and alliances. Now, you all are leaders as well. In fact, a lot of people don't understand that the insurance and brokerage industry is probably the number one leader in cybersecurity and has been for over 3 decades. So I like to quote Churchill when he said, the 3 most difficult things to do are, 1, climb a wall that is leaning towards you, kiss somebody that's leaning away from you, and talk about a subject that the audience knows more about than you do. So let's get to it. Let me give you some of my thoughts on leadership. Now, I was a commissioned officer for 34 years, a flag officer for 8 years, and then 4 years at the Naval Academy. So I spent 39 years in the uniform of our nation serving in the Navy. So I led at all levels, and I think successfully, from small organizations of only 8 individuals to an organization where I led 26 ships and 16,000 sailors and Marines. And I think I was successful in my leadership, and I learned a great deal. I learned that I felt that leadership was my calling. And the thing about leadership is it's not about ships or squadrons or aircraft or weapon systems. Leadership is about people. In fact, when I was being looked at for command of a squadron, the admiral I was working for at the time said, Gary, you don't command hangars, you don't lead ships, you don't lead aircraft, you lead people. And he said, you're a good leader and you'll do fine in whatever squadron you get. Also, during my time in the Navy, I had a relationship with a venture capitalist. And he said, Gary, in industry, there are great ideas and there's a lot of money. The problem we have is we don't have the connection of leadership to combine ideas and money. So leadership will make a difference. So think of that. What is the leadership result or equivalent in the insurance industry? Could it be a result with satisfied investors, satisfied customers, clients, survivors, families? Leadership is needed everywhere we look. Of course, in politics, leadership is absolutely needed. In our school systems, absolutely needed. Can you imagine what this pandemic has done to our school systems and how we need leadership in order to keep our young people, our future, on track to be educated and to be contributing members of our society? Well, we find a lot of challenges and a lot of leadership that is getting around those challenges of distance learning or a combination of video learning and in class learning. Also, during this pandemic, of course, leaders on the local level, everywhere from mayors, governors, senators, congressmen, all the way up to the president, we've seen leadership of all kinds as we try and attack this pandemic. Now, my wife and I, we also taught marriage preparation for the Catholic Church, and during that lessons we provided to the young married folks is that leadership is needed in the home. It doesn't matter whether one person leads all the time, but all the time someone has to be leading, whether it's mom or whether it's dad. Now, out there in the world, there's all sorts of leaders. Crack dealers are leaders. Human traffickers are leaders. But what they lack, what you have, is a noble cause. So leadership can be used for evil or it can be used for good. And I think the insurance and brokerage industry has a noble cause of serving their clients, families, and survivors. So you do have a noble cause. So I can teach you leadership. If I can teach you how to fly a helicopter, I can teach you a little bit about leadership. To fly a helicopter, you get in, strap in, you use the rudder pedals and a hover to turn left and right, you use the collective to go up and down and the cyclic to go any direction you wish. Well, I've told you about it, we've talked about it, now get in a helicopter and fly. Same thing with leadership. We can talk about it all day long, but you got to get in the role and you got to exercise your leadership. And I'll tell you, it's just like building muscle. The more you lead, the better you'll do and the better your leadership will be. So you are designated leaders, you're assumed leaders by your clients, and I want you, and your industry wants you to be leaders. And the thing that leadership can do, it can add money, can add value to any organization without adding cost. So I'll tell you one thing, leadership has made a difference in my life. I feel it's a calling. And so I think when I get to the end of my life, I can be like my grandfather, and I can pass in my sleep with a smile on my face, not like the passengers in his car that were screaming and yelling. Okay, that's my grandfather's joke. Now let's get to it and let's do some defining of leadership. You know, leadership is kind of like time. If you ask somebody, define time, they'll have a difficulty defining it. If I ask you to define leadership, you may have trouble defining it. So here's a definition that I like to use in defining leadership. Leadership is the ability to inspire appropriate action beyond the expectable. I'll say that again. Leadership is the ability to inspire appropriate action beyond the expectable. You know, a lot of times when we talk about leadership, people throw in management. You know, is leadership and management the same thing? Not exactly. I'll tell you why. Leadership is doing the right thing. Management is doing things right. I'll say that again. Leadership is doing the right thing. Management is doing things right. So you can be a great manager and a poor leader. You could also be a great leader and a poor manager. So at some point, the more senior you get, you need to combine the two. As our Chief of Naval Operations told his admirals, yes, you have to do the right thing, but you have to do it in the right way. Now, to hone in on this definition of leadership and management, I want you to think about asking a preteen in your life, can you explain to me the difference between doing things right and doing the right thing? Well, I asked this question to my youngest son, Sam, when he was about 9 or 10, and we were driving in the car, and I said, Sam, can you tell me the difference between doing the right thing and doing things right? And he said, Dad, can I use an example from sex ed today? Gulp. All right, let's see what this explanation is going to be. So he said, doing things right, if I saw somebody laying in the street with their head on the curb and blood everywhere, I would run up to that person and I would say, excuse me, do you have HIV or AIDS? Do you have any other communicable diseases I should think about? I would then find rubber gloves, maybe some antiseptic, and a face shield, and then I would perform first aid. I'm going, wow, that's a great example of doing things right. And I said, okay, tell me an example in that scenario of doing the right thing. He said, well, if I saw somebody laying in the street with their head on the curb and blood everywhere, I would run up, I would stop the bleeding, start the bleeding, and call 911. So he knew the difference as a preteen, the difference between doing the right thing and doing things right. So let me give you some traits that I think we should talk about in leadership. And of course, the number one trait I look at is desire. You know, there are people that don't want to be leaders. They just want to sit in their cubicles. They want to mash away at their computer keyboard. They don't want to deal with people. They don't have the desire to lead. You have to have that desire to step forward and lead. There is no such thing as leading from the rear. So if you don't have the desire, it's going to be difficult to walk to the front of your organization or troops. As Patton once said, a piece of spaghetti or a military unit can only be led from the front end. The next attribute I like to talk about is commitment. Now, commitment in naval aviation, when you talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. And I have found out in life there are only 3 types of people in this world. 1, those that are good with math, and 2, those that are not. Well, in naval aviation, we have 2 types of pilots. Those that say they want to fly and those that want to fly. The ones that say they want to fly are not committed, and we call them seagulls because you have to throw a rock at them to get them off the ground. And those that want to fly get the great missions, get the challenging missions, and are highly rewarded. So they are committed. And now sometimes people don't understand commitment, so I'll explain it in the form of the breakfast you had this morning. Maybe you had scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and orange juice. Well, the Florida farmer provided the oranges for the orange juice. The baker provided the bread for the toast. The chicken provided the egg. But only one person in that breakfast is committed, and that is the pig. He is committed. So I need you to be the pig in your breakfast and be committed to leadership. Now, next trait I like to talk about is responsibility. In leadership, I break down responsibility in 3 areas. 1, you need to be responsible to yourself. You're no good to others if you're not responsible to yourself, if you're not taking care of your health, your well-being, have a balanced life of work, leisure, family, friends. Again, be responsible to yourself. The second thing I need you to be responsible to are the people in your organization. You need to know them. You need to know them by name. You need to know what they do. You need to know their strengths, their weaknesses, what's going on in their life. It might seem excessive or intruding, but if you're interested in a person, you sure will learn a lot and they'll work harder for you. And finally, I need you to be responsible to your profession. You need to know your profession inside and out. You need to be constantly learning. You need to be constantly perfecting your craft, your knowledge. So, as Lincoln said to U.S. Grant, I neither ask nor desire to know anything about your plans. Take responsibility and act, and call me for assistance. And so that's how you should lead your organization. Don't wait to be told. Get out there and lead, take action, execute your plans. And if you do need assistance, there's always got to be somebody, in your organization that you can call for assistance. Number 4 leadership trait, accountability. Accountability is the tough one. Responsibility is one thing, accountability is another. Accountability stays with the leader. Accountability cannot be transferred to someone else. Responsibility can be delegated, accountability cannot. I'll tell you, there is no greater example of accountability than being a captain of a ship at sea. If that ship were to run aground, the captain knows he or she is accountable. They cannot blame it on the helmsman or the navigator or the watchstanders. Now, you've probably seen it in industry, and I've seen it when I was taking my MBA and we were talking to management. The number one trait of executives in trouble is to blame others. Well, wipe that out of your system. Never blame others. Be accountable for your organization and for yourself. Accountability is definitely the tough one. Accountability takes courage. Courage to do the right thing, courage to take responsibility for your actions, and accountability for your organization. Now, courage is not the absence of fear. It's not the absence of anxiety. Courage is the strength to operate through your fears and anxieties. So I need you to be accountable. The next thing a great leader does is creates a vision. Now, a vision can be detailed, it can be on the fly depending on the situation at the time. But here is the task that I'm going to recommend to you. Think about this, think about your organization, and create a vision statement. And I would say call it a who we are. Who are we? Who are we? Spend some time thinking about that in your position and your team. Who are we? Write a vision statement, maybe just a one-pager called Who We Are. That way, that gives you a roadmap and keeps you between the lines, because if you're doing something that isn't in that vision statement of who we are, you might be able to say, that's not who we are. And this is very important in leading an organization, because once you've shared that who we are with everyone, when you have to counsel an individual based on their actions, you can say, what you did is not who we are. So I'll tell you, people in organizations that create a document, I'm hammering this home, of who we are, they make a difference in their organization. So you need to have a clear vision, and because with a vision, you attract others to your vision. As Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. So once you've created that vision, now the next challenge is communicating your vision. I'll tell you, once you have that vision, there are multiple ways to communicate a vision. So one is to put it in writing, share the document with everybody. If you have a Who We Are document, you share it with everybody. In fact, you might even want to share a rough draft so that others add to it, and that brings in buy-in for the members of your team so that they feel part of creating that vision. And once they create that vision and help you with that, they're going to have buy-in. They're going to take responsibility and accountability themselves to make sure that you follow that vision. Now, a vision, to communicate that vision, you can't just write it out on a sheet of paper and post it in the break room or the coffee shop. You've got to constantly reiterate that vision. So then you might want to condense it and actually put it in your head like a 3x5 card, that when you're talking to somebody, you can ask them questions about the vision. You can tell them your thoughts about the vision. You can say what just happened is clearly in our vision, in our organization. So, a lot of this remote working we're doing by video conference, such as what we're doing right now. But sometimes you don't want to Zoom or Microsoft Teams with somebody. Pick up the phone and talk to them. There's a difference when talking to somebody on the phone than just with like a Zoom or a video conference. There's almost some more intimacy in that. So talk to your individuals, or talk to the people in your organization individually, and talk to them by phone occasionally. So you've got to keep reiterating your vision in talks, in speeches, in writings, in emails. So anyway, communicate that vision. The next thing leaders need to do, it's kind of in conjunction with creating a vision, but setting goals. And I think you need to set goals, personal goals, professional goals, for yourself, for your team. So professional goals for yourself and professional goals for your team. We want you to grow as a leader and move up the chain of command, but you also have to have professional goals for your organization and individuals in your organization. Now, there's many ways to find out how to set goals on the internet, and I'll tell you, there's a book that was written in 1934 that I might commend to you, and that is Think and Grow Rich. There's a great section on setting goals and writing down goals. But basically, you need to bring the future present, and state what your goal is and what you're going to do to accomplish that goal, what you're going to give up to accomplish that goal. So once you've set goals and communicated goals, you're off to the races. So leadership, bottom line, is leading by example. Leadership is what leadership does. Leaders empower their subordinates. In fact, I'll tell you, by empowering your subordinates, you get more out of them. If you just micromanage and demand, you're only going to get what you micromanage and demand. Your subordinates may know more information than you do. A great example is when I was number 2 on the ship, when the captain would be on the bridge of the ship, he would tell the officer of the deck, come right 15 degrees. Bring speed up to 15 knots. He told them exactly what to do. And so they knew when coming on watch, they didn't have to prepare because they knew the captain would tell them what to do. So when I took command, I got my bridge team together and we were going to leave port in San Diego. And I said, okay, I'm going to sit over there in the big captain's chair and I'm going to read the San Diego Union. You're going to take this ship and you're going to get us out of port and underway without me telling you what to do. I'll tell you, that empowered them. They grew. I stepped off the bridge, came back a half hour later, and they were over the chart. They were discussing what they needed to do. They were taking action. They were looking up instructions on pubs. They were mapping out their decisions and their options. I'll tell you, I empowered them. They learned, they grew as mariners. So learn to empower your people. Now, also, I've looked at, and you've probably looked at, the traits of a leader. And so one of the great traits of a leader is unwavering courage. And again, courage is not the absence of fear, but working through fear. Self-control. If you're not in control of your activities, yourself, your well-being, how can you expect others to be? You know, a great leader has a fair sense of fairness, a sense of justice. And a great leader does more than is expected, has a pleasing personality. You know, I use humor, but that's in my personality. We had a chaplain at the United States Naval Academy, Commander O'Connor, and he said he couldn't go to Vietnam because of his eyes. And people said, "What's wrong with your eyes?" And he said, "I can't see getting shot at." Well, he used humor in difficult situations, and later he went on to be the chief of chaplains in the United States Navy and also Cardinal of New York. So the bottom line is leadership is going to add money to your business. It's going to empower people. It's going to retain people. It's going to make a difference. In fact, nobody leaves the United States Navy. Nobody quits Home Depot. Nobody leaves the U.S. Post Office. What they leave is lousy leaders, lousy supervisors. So by being a good leader, you're going to retain people, and that eliminates the cost of training. So I'm going to ask you to think, ask, and act. I want you to think about leadership is what leadership does. I'm going to say, ask yourself, am I doing the best leadership job I can do in my position today? And then I'm going to ask you to act and join me and Dan and the NAILBA 39 Engagement Fellows now and in the past in leading well. So I want to thank you for allowing me to be here during Engage 39, coming to you by video. I see that I had a couple of video glitches, but I think everything came through well. So you can find my podcast, The Admiral's Almanac, wherever you get your podcasts, or even just say, "Alexa, play The Admiral's Almanac." So that's my pitch for today. I want you all to be well and lead well. So again, I'm Rear Admiral Gary Hall, world famous helicopter pilot, adventurer, sportsman, and world traveler. I'm perhaps the finest helicopter pilot I know, call sign Viper, and it's been a pleasure for me to talk to you today.